Is my car still fixed? The Studebaker, is it? That one with the little doggy in the window that opens and closes. For 11 years, Carol Burnett made a lot of people laugh. But in 1977, she did something that made everyone on board cry. People watched the show just once, and it broke their hearts. Some people thought it was clever. Lots of awards came in. She never watched it again, though. In 47 years, never once. It seemed too real to her. She couldn't stand to see herself in the sketch because it was so true to life. What made the funniest woman in America not want to face her own performance? April 26 is the day Carol Burnett was born. 1933 in Texas's San Antonio. She had pain in her life from the very beginning. Both of her parents were heavy drinkers and couldn't take care of her. Her dad had a job at a movie theater, but he couldn't keep it for long. As much as her dad, her mom drank and wasn't there for her. Both would later die of illnesses caused by drinking. Even though Carol was only a baby, she knew what it was like to be dropped. The people who were supposed to love her most had picked bottles over nighttime stories. It was a lonely and dangerous world, and Carol quickly learned that laughing could keep her from breaking. She was raised by her maternal grandma, Mabel White, after her parents gave up on raising her. They moved from Texas to Hollywood in 1940, but there wasn't a red carpet ready for them. They shared a small room in a run-down boarding house with other people who were also sad. Addicts, renters with mental illnesses, and people on welfare who were desperately trying to hold on to hope. Food. They only had $20 a week, which wasn't even enough for food, let alone a dream. Carol had never had love like Mabel's before, but she gave it to her. She was poor, but she was safe at last, made up a way out of that mess in the middle of it all. It was a fake twin sister named Karen that she made up. In every way, Karen was different from Carol. Beautiful, sure of herself, and always happy. And Carol made her seem so real that even the other renters thought she was real. Going up the fire escape, she'd change her hair and clothes and come back as Karen. Very cute and fun. After a few minutes, she'd come back as Carol. The fact that these adults believed it, even though many of them were barely hanging on. How well Carol could act and how much everyone in that house needed something happy to believe in are both shown by this. Many of the escapes were real, though. So she and her grandmother would go to the movies every Saturday. Each ticket cost 25 cents, which is more than 10% of their weekly income. She forgot about the screaming, the peeling paint, and the fear for those few hours. Life shone on TV. People kissed and the stars danced. There was order, food, and beauty. However, survival became clear again after the credits rolled. Because they didn't have enough money at home, they would sneak toilet paper from the theater bathroom. They were not embarrassed. They were in a bad way. She knew what it was like to be hungry for more than just food when she was 7 years old. As she sat in that dark theater one day, she heard Johnny Weissmuller's famous Tarzan yell all the way through the room. It was like lightning to her. At home, she started to copy it over and over again, getting better every pitch and beat. She had no idea that she was working on her singing and learning how to control her breath in a way that most singers take years to get good at. He signed it even though it was just a game. People would later laugh and cheer during her live shows when she made that noise. What began as a child's imitating turned into one of her first comedic skills. By the end of high school, Carol only had one dream: reporting. She felt like she had to finish what her mother couldn't because her mother had always wanted to be a writer. The goal was UCLA, but when it was time to sign up, she was hit with a harsh truth. She lacked the $50 she needed to pay for school. That's about $600 these days. It would have been the end for most people. It looked like it was for a while. Then something strange took place. Someone else, whose name she never found out, stepped in and paid the amount. No ties and no reason. She had just enough money to make a change. She was going to UCLA to study writing, but an elective theater class changed everything for her. Something inside her clicked in that room. She stopped being shy. She wasn't poor or hard to see. She was loud, funny, and fully living. It was seen by her teachers. Her friends did the same. She could sing, act, and make people laugh all at the same time. Journalism seemed too small for her all of a sudden. She changed her major. It was dangerous, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't coming through. She had a dream. That risk quickly paid off. At the end of her first year, she was named UCLA's theater program's most bright newcomer. It wasn't just a title, a sign was given. It let her know that following this dream wasn't crazy. It made her stronger, more determined to do well on stage, and less likely to feel bad about wanting more than just survival. The award helped her get better parts in school plays and support from teachers who could tell she wasn't like the other kids. She wasn't just another actor on the rise. You couldn't fake the spark she had. Carol Burnett worked as an usherette for 65 cents an hour while she was a junior in college in 1954. At the party in San Diego, where her life took a strange turn, she wasn't there to share the good times. She was putting small treats in her bag to give to her grandmother when she got home, when she got home. Then a stranger in a sharp suit walked up to her. He wasn't in show business. He was a rich carpenter from La Jolla. Carol told him that her dream was to make it on Broadway in New York, but she couldn't even pay the $43 for UCLA. She thought the man's offer was too good to be true. $1,000 for her and her boyfriend Don Soroyan, but he told them 3 things. Don't say his name. Get to New York with the money only, and if they did well, they had to help other people do well too. He didn't want praise. He just said that he was repaying a favor that someone had done for him. After a while, his wife told him that he had done things like this before for gas stations, businesses, and people with dreams. Don packed up his things and left UCLA with the $2,000 in his hand. In 1954, they went east, even though Carol had only been to Texas before. She didn't care that she didn't know anyone in New York. She said, "I wasn't scared because I didn't know enough." It was $9 a night at the Algonquin Hotel when they got to the city. It was too much. The cash began to disappear very quickly. At one point, she started crying while calling her family on a pay call. They begged her to come back. Then, just as she was about to give up, she heard something on the radio. Carol, the name of the storm, was moving up the coast. It meant something to her. It made her strong enough to stay free. Soon, she was in the training club, which was a whole new world. The building was old and used by young women who wanted to get into the arts. She shared a room with 4 other actors and paid $18 a week for a cot. There was only 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom, but it was heaven for her. Back at home, she slept on a couch. The place was full of life. Girl groups work on their lines, sing, and run around with hair curlers in. Carol worked at night as a hat check girl and tried out for jobs during the day to make ends meet. It wasn't fancy, but it was true. She and the other girls put on a show called the Rehearsal Club Review in March 1955. They invited managers and producers by mail. People with big names showed up, like Marlene Dietrich. That night, doors began to open. Something really silly gave her her first big break. This is a love song about John Foster Dulles, the stiff and very serious U.S. in charge of state. It was a joke song written by Ken Welch that was silly and over the top. However, Carol did it so well that it became her trademark. The crowd went crazy. She was asked to be on both the Jack Paar Show and the Ed Sullivan Show. She walked out on the Sullivan stage on January 6, 1957, with her knees shaking. But by the end of her show, everyone was laughing so hard they could not breathe. In August of the same year, she came back to sing the worst song again, along with a joke about puppy love. That silly song made her the talk of the comedy world in New York. Carol worked hard for another 5 years. In 1955, she had a small part on the Paul Winchell Show as the girlfriend of a ventriloquist's doll. That got him a part in Stanley with Buddy Hackett, but it was only for a year. Things changed, though, in 1959. Carol got the lead role in the new show, Once Upon a Mattress, which was picked up for Broadway after its run off Broadway. She played Princess Winifred, a girl from the marsh who was loud and clumsy, and not at all like any princess from a fairy tale. The show became very famous very quickly. He put her forward for her first Tony Award, and Carol and Don paid back the full $2,000 on June 22, 1959, which was exactly 5 years after she got that mystery loan. The millionaire didn't answer. He stayed unknown until the end. Carol was making $500 a week at that point, which made her feel like she had won the lottery. The movie Once Upon a Mattress wasn't even meant to be a hit. It began as a small project for summer camp. When it opened on Broadway in May 1959, Critics didn't love it, but the crowd did. For 470 shows, the show went from one building to another. What made the difference was Carol's show. The show ended in just 1 week after she left in June 1960. Her replacement only did 8 shows before the show ended for good. Carol was no longer replaceable. After that came the Gary Moore show. Carol went from being a growing star to a full-on TV star between 1959 and 1962. In 1962, she got her first Emmy. Her role as the cleaning lady became famous, but what that show really meant to her was what it taught her. Gary Moore's unrehearsed Q&A warm-ups led to the live crowd interactions that made the Carol Burnett show what it is today. Don Knotts and Jonathan Winters are 2 other big stars who got their start on the show. That show was one of the most important comedy shows ever. It ran from 1950 to 1967. Carol, you really showed how to use time, character, and risk all very well. There was another amazing event in 1962, this time at Carnegie Hall. CBS wasn't sure if they should let her do a show with Julie Andrews. They said Carol was on TV every week and Julie wasn't well known enough. But Michael Dann and Oscar Katz, the 2 executives in charge, saw Carol having a hard time getting a cab one night after a work event. She made fun of the fact that a truck driver might take her home instead. Soon after, a truck pulled up and offered to take her home. They thought it was fate. The show was okayed. 3 big awards were given to that special Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall. It got an Emmy and a Rose d'Or. Columbia Records even put out a recording that got to number 85 on the charts. But what happened next was much better. The Carol Burnett show started on September 11, 1967, and things will never be the same again. No one thought Carol would be able to break through that wall. ChatGPT said that Variety gave it a 23. That's how big it was. It wasn't just about big numbers, though. The show changed the way TV works. There were live comedy skits in front of a studio crowd for the first time on one of the variety shows. That style helped make Saturday Night Live what it is today. And Carol Burnett did a lot of new things. She wasn't just another star. She was one of the first women to run her own comedy show. She broke the rules and made it possible for many women to work in comedy at a time when most TV shows were run by men. The show was good every day and at every time. People watched it every week, whether it was on Monday at 10 p.m. or later on Saturday nights. It's not often that strong of a regularity. Fans were not the only ones who saw it. There were a crazy 25 Primetime Emmy Awards won by the Carol Burnett show in its 11-year run. Yes, 25. It wasn't like the awards were all in one place. The show won for Best Variety Series, Best Writing, Best Music, and Best Choreography. Harvey Korman won 4 Emmys of his own. In 1969, 1971, 1972, and 1974 for their excellent supporting roles. He won 4 as well, 3 for playing and 1 for writing. Even the last season of the show, which ended in 1978, went out with a bang, winning several awards, including Best Variety Series. It didn't end there. In 1977 and 1978, Carol Burnett won 2 Golden Globes for her work as an actress in a comedy or musical. The show also won the People's Choice Award 3 years in a row for Favorite Variety Broadcast. 1975, 1977, and 1978. After winning so many awards, it became clear that it was the best show on TV. Since then, most variety shows haven't even come close. Behind the scenes, though, not everything was smiles and cheers. Harvey Korman almost quit the show for good during its 7th season. Tim Conway and singer Petula Clark were guests that week. They are 2 of the nicest people in show business. The mood wasn't right, though. During practice, he was rude and angry. It's not like Carol Burnett to let things slide, but she won't this time. After the show on Friday night, she asked him what was going on alone. Korman gave a harsh answer. He said, "I'm just not happy here." Then he hit her in the face with the door to the changing room. That was it. He fired his agent by calling him. He changed his mind over the weekend, though. He asked for another chance. Burnett agreed, but there was one thing he wanted. She told him, "I want to see you skipping and whistling down the hallway at CBS on Monday morning." In fact, that's what he did. As soon as he got off the lift on Monday morning, he began to skip and whistle. Burnett laughed so hard that he had a sign made for his door. Mr. Goodmood. He stayed with the show until the 10th season. Then Tim Conway showed up. There was a wild card in Conway. He had a rule. Don't go all out during practice. It didn't bother him that he saved his best lines for the live shows. He once said, "Some of it comes on the spur of the moment, and some I keep in the back of my mind." With that plan, every show was different and completely unexpected. Harvey Korman said it very well, Ewing. He never does the same thing twice. The elephant story was the most well-known part of Conway's chaos. He told a long, silly story about a circus elephant in a sketch from the family show. Carol Burnett, Vicki Lawrence, and Dick Van Dyke did everything they could to stay in character while he went on and on. But the story got stranger and funnier over time. Even Vicki Lawrence lost it by the end. She replied with a line that was so out of the blue that everyone on set laughed out loud. "Luke, is that little jerk sure he's through?" Even Conway laughed so hard he was crying. That kind of thing became the heart of the show. Raw, real and spontaneous all the way through. But not all of the scenes were funny. There was something that really upset Carol Burnett in 1977. It came from one of the sketches that came up often. The family. She was Eunice Higgins, a woman who was sad because her hopes and dreams had been dashed. In the past, the sketch mixed comedy with chaos, but this time they tried something new. There are no jokes or exaggerations, just pain. It was called The Gong Show. She thinks that speaking about her feelings on a talent show will finally make her famous. The judges make fun of her instead. Alan Ludden, who hosts a game show in real life, played one of them. Burnett did a good job with it. At the end, everyone on the team was almost in tears. There was no funny accent or silly movement. The episode still had a lot of power when it was shown. It slowly moved away from Eunice's teary face as the lights went out. Don't play music or laugh. Just broken hearts. People were shocked. Many people liked it, but Burnett never watched it again. She said in an interview in 2010 that was too real. "It hurt me to see Eunice in pain." It's true. Burnett had been poor as a child. She knew how it felt to have big dreams and be made fun of for them. It was too close to home for that sketch. In a later conversation with Harper's Bazaar, she talked about how she felt. She said, "I'm glad we did it, but that wasn't what our show was about. We weren't there to remind people of their problems, but to make them forget about them." The sketch did leave a mark, though. In 1982, a TV movie called Eunice and a comedy called Mama's Family were made from it. Burnett quit the show in the end because she didn't like where it was going. However, the first episode became famous. People did more than laugh when they read Carol Burnett. Behind the scenes, she was going through a lot of heartache, chaos and family fights that would have broken most people. When she met her first husband, Don Soroyan, in college, it all began. They were young, in love, and both wanted to be famous in show business. Born in Omaha in 1928, he had big dreams of making it big on Broadway. They got married 3 years after meeting at UCLA in 1955, but their love didn't last. After Don's ex-girlfriend's daughter died, he was never the same. Carol's job went up while his stayed the same. The stress broke up their marriage. They broke up on Christmas Day 1959 and got a divorce in 1962. Don got depressed and drank too much until he died at the age of 62 in 1990. He never got to the point where he wanted to be on stage, wasn't single for long. Soon after, she met Joe Hamilton. Joe had already been married before and had 8 kids from that marriage. He also put together Carol's 1962 show at Carnegie Hall. They got married in 1963 and worked on her popular show together. They had 3 girls named Carrie, Jody, and Erin. And a loss of the baby in 1965. Their house was always full, with Joe's 8 kids and their 3. While running Carol's show, he won 5 Emmys. Their jobs did well, but their home lives fell apart. There was a false story in the National Enquirer in 1976 that Carol was drunk at a restaurant and sat next to Henry Kissinger. Not only was that not true, but she had spent years speaking out against drinking, so it hurt her a lot. She took the newspaper to court and asked for $1.06 million. The case went on for 5 years and showed how careless newspapers could be. The person who was asked had been told by a paid source that Carol wasn't drunk, but the story was still spread. Even though she won the case, It was settled for about $200,000 after appeals. It wasn't about the cash. It wasn't about the cash. The goal was to clear her name, and it changed tabloid news for good. The most important fight of her life wasn't in court, though. It happened at home. In the late 1970s, her daughter Carrie turned to drugs and used them a lot. Carrie used drugs like cocaine, pot, mushrooms and quaaludes when she was only 13. In the end, she said that she did drugs to stop being Carol Burnett's daughter and be her own person. Carol saw her child leave her between 1976 and 1979. She sent her to rehab after rehab. Ran away from a Texas prison at one point. She was afraid she would lose her daughter for good. Carrie got clean in the end when she was 17, but it wasn't easy. Carol had to make the most difficult choice of her life. She made Carrie hate her for it. She did say that you have to love them enough to let them hate you, though. They didn't talk for more than a year, but she never gave up. They became closer than ever when Carrie came back. Carrie got a big part on the TV show Fame, which showed she was talented on her own. They worked together in movies and TV shows, and she even wrote a play about Carol's life called Hollywood Arms. Even though they were joined at the hip, tragedy struck again. She died in 2002 from pneumonia brought on by lung cancer that had spread to her brain. She was only 38 years old. She never saw the first show of Hollywood Arms. Carol was upset, but she kept going because she felt she owed Carrie it. The end of Carol's second marriage was in 1984. At that point, Carrie's addiction, the stress of their jobs and their relationships had worn her and Joe Hamilton down. Their two younger girls went to live in Hawaii with their grandparents so they wouldn't have to see their parents fight. Once they were no longer married, Joe stayed close to his family until he died of cancer in 1991. But Carol found love again, even though she had been married twice and been through two terrible breakups. At a show in Long Beach in the late 1990s, she met Brian Miller. It didn't matter that he was 23 years younger. In 2001, they got married. He was 45 years old, and she was 68 years old. Carrie died just 2 months after that. Brian was there for Carol when things were at their worst. They've been together ever since he pushed her to finish Hollywood Arms. Carol and Brian took care of their son when their youngest daughter Erin was addicted and couldn't when she was on 20s on 20. They took Dylan, their grandson, into their care. Erin's drug use had turned into a nightmare for 19 years. She had been to rehab 8 times and stayed there for almost 240 days. When Erin's home became dangerous for her son, the court stepped in. In July 2020, Erin told her kids she was going to kill herself. She was put on a mental hold after the police got involved. Soon after, asked to become Dylan's legal guardian. The court gave Carol and Brian temporary custody within a few weeks. She did something else to protect her family, even though it hurt her. When Carol Burnett showed up in the last season of Better Call Saul, everyone was shocked. Even though she was 89 years old, she was still a great actress. She played Marianne, a kind but sharp old woman who slowly uncovered the truth about Saul Goodman.